talk to them about real estate. The ones who are interested will kind of guide you in the direction where you can have a deeper conversation with them about what you could do if you partnered together, even if it was just a short-term deal. And from there, you might find one or two people that can help you scale your portfolio while you still have your job, making some money, saving some, so you can keep doing this without having to wait 5 years to save for your next down payment, which is probably what would happen for most people.
If you're an active real estate investor and you're looking to do larger deals, you're in the right place. We are going to go and take the conceptual type of stuff that you listen to from other real estate podcasts and bring it down to the tactical, the nitty-gritty, the actual actionable types of things that other real estate investors that went big did to grow their own real estate empire. You're listening to the Go Big Live podcast. I'm your host, Matt Druin.
Hey, what is up, everybody? I'm your host of the Go Big Live Real Estate Investors podcast. I have a very special guest on with me today, Mr. Antonio Cucciniello. Both of us are obsessed with Italian culture and Italy and going to Italy and stuff like that. So we share that in common. Actually, how I met Antonio was he was on my list of people to hunt down at BPCon in Orlando. And I finally found him. I snuck into the room he was in and I sat next to him creepily and I slid him a note before he left. And I was like, hey, man, would you be willing to come on my show? If so, just like shoot me a message. So that's how we connected. Antonio is an experienced real estate investor and has accumulated a pretty impressive portfolio on the growth path. Myself, Antonio's handle is Investarters, specialized content around people that are looking to just get started out or buy their first couple of investment properties. And the one thing that it is pertinent to the people that listen to this show that may be in the larger deal space is follow him, because he has such a raw, no BS way of communicating information, educational, evaluated content that is like nobody I've ever seen before. And I follow him to get content ideas. And I'm like, oh, that's genius. Like, how can I apply that to commercial in terms of my own educational platform? So anyways, long-winded introduction. Thanks for being on the show, Antonio.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I appreciate the heartfelt compliment. You knew I was going to be at BPCon?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
I
started. How do you know that?
I did through social media.
I don't remember ever posting that I was going to be there necessarily, but
okay.
Maybe someone else shared a story and I was there, and then I shared it to my story. I don't know, but I was like, is there a public list of who's getting to go to the event and you had access to it? Because that's a smart idea to get access to that if you wanted to meet the right people in the room.
Actually, that leads into some great advice. I mean, if you go to any sort of conference, whether it's real estate oriented or not, you can actually, a lot of these conference hosts will allow you to pay for the list of people that are going to be there as attendees and sponsors. And I've actually done that before. And it's you pay $100, but then you can actually directly, intentionally hey, I want to build a relationship with this person. There's no better way to do that because they live on the West Coast than getting belly to belly with them. So Antonio, I don't remember. I think it was mid-conference that I was like, oh yeah, he's there. And I was going to, hunt him. I'm going to hunt them down. I didn't use the dark web to find that you're going to be there or anything like that. So I'm creepy, but not that creepy.
I hope my information's not on the dark web, but.
So let's jump into it, man. My first question is a doozy, man. You can take and run with it how you feel fit. So you were born and now you're here. What happened in between?
Depends how you look at it. I was born in Staten Island, New York, to my both Italian immigrant parents. As you mentioned, we were obsessed with Italian culture. I was kind of forced to be obsessed with Italian culture because of that. And part of the Italian culture is this work hard mentality, but also this, you're going to go to school, become an engineer, a lawyer, a doctor mentality. And so most of my life, I went to school, got good grades, and became a software engineer. I'll sprinkle this in as well because I think it's important, is my parents were also very strict. And when you're strict and you get things taken away from you a lot of times you feel like you don't ever have control over your life and your time. My parents always dictated what I had to do, what I could do, what I couldn't. And so I grew up with this, I want to control my life and time. So when you combine that with software engineering, I was became a software engineer because I knew I liked computers and I liked math. And so I started doing that. And like first day at my first job, I was like, holy crap, I can't do this for the rest of my life. So I go
Mhm.
home and I learned about entrepreneurship. I didn't know what entrepreneurship was, even though my dad is a contractor, one person business. My uncle owns a solar business and he's one person. My other uncle owns a trucking business and he's one person. And my other uncle is a barber. And so like I was like, holy crap, my entire family is business owners, but they were telling me this not lie, but they were forcing me towards this other direction that none of them had ever done.
Mhm.
And my friend was like, there's this other thing called entrepreneurship. And I was like, huh, I never even heard of that, given that I was surrounded by it my entire life. So that's when I started learning a little bit about real estate investing. And like a few weeks after that, my first job had layoffs. And I was a new junior engineer and they were not paying me much and I was getting enough done. So they didn't lay me off, thank God. But
Mhm.
they laid off a bunch of older guys who were getting paid a boatload of money for being there at the company. And I vividly remember one who was like, everyone was surrounding his office and the guy was like in tears because he had just paid off his daughter's tuition. So he had no money left in his savings, his daughter's college tuition. He had no money left in his savings. And he was like, I don't know how I'm going to pay my mortgage next month. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, I was like, that's what I'm going to be in 25, 30 years. That's
Mhm.
stupid. I don't want to be like that. Like, I didn't sign up for this. Not only do I hate the fact that I'm tied to a desk every day that doesn't allow me to control my life and my time, but if I'm still going to be tied to a desk when I'm 55 and, you know, be successful by paying off my daughter's tuition, I don't consider that success. So I was like, I got to do something else.
Mhm.
So I started an Amazon FBA business, and a year later we lost $21,000. I learned a lot about partnerships and stuff. But this whole time I wanted to invest in real estate, and I was really scared, and I didn't do it because I was like, I'm young, I don't want to buy a house and make a mistake. Like, how do I know if it's even going to be profitable? Plus, living in New Jersey and New York, all the home prices were super expensive around me. I was like, and all I knew about was real estate around you. I didn't know it was possible to do something farther away or being completely remote.
Mhm.
So I stalled basically for 4 years, and I just kept what I call the saving and waiting phase, where you're like, I'm reading books, a lot of them behind me. I'm reading
Mhm.
these books, and they're like motivating, but at the end of the day, I still don't know what to do. And so I kept going to bigger pockets, and I would see the question asked over and over again. I want to invest in real estate, but I don't know where to start. That's exactly how I felt.
Mhm.
Now, fast forward to like 2017, I started making videos because I got motivated from a family situation that could open up a whole nother rabbit hole. So I'll just limit it to that. And uh, I started making videos just to try to put like positive influence out into the world, less that I didn't have a niche. I didn't know what I was doing. And then like I was doing that for 2 years, and then I kept learning about real estate in the background, and this like connection came to my head. I was like, no one's talking about this problem. There's the Grant Cardones of the world who are flashy and have the nice card, but no one's really talking about how to get your first one and like how complicated it can feel and how overwhelming it is. And so I just started making content around that.
Mhm.
I did that for basically 2 years. And so now I've been making content for 4 years, investing for two, and I happened to be on TikTok. And as I was on, like, my girlfriend was like, you should check out this TikTok thing. So I checked out TikTok December 2020. I had 2 weeks off from work, and I was like, I'm going to just post 2 times a day and see what happens. At the end of the 2 weeks, I had gotten like a 275x ROI in terms of like videos and views and followers. And I was
Mhm.
like, that's it. I'm just going to double down on this. And so I
Mhm.
doubled down on that. I left my full-time job in April 2021 and have been doing full-time content creation for helping beginner real estate investors get started, and been investing real estate as well as the time has been going on to keep learning. And as I keep learning, I just try to teach it in my videos and vice versa. And so I bought my first investment property in 2019. I forgot to mention that's kind of when I made the switch into those types of videos. And then I started buying more, partnering with my family members. And then now it has turned into like me kind of managing my dad and my mom's uh, retirement portfolio that will then also hopefully be me, my brother, and my sisters moving forward down the line.
Absolutely. There's a couple of things that's an awesome story, by the way. I want to kind of touch on a couple of points before I go into like the first kind of like case study I want to talk about from a scale perspective. The guy that got laid off that paid off his daughter's tuition, it was like one of those things where can you get like a line of credit against, a college tuition, like balance payoff? Is like, no,
No.
you can't do that. You can't be like, hey, can I get that, Sally Mae, can I get that money back? Because I really need it right now.
Can I re-borrow that at 3%? Nope.
So no, I mean, that's like the one thing, like these, like, it's never one thing. It's like a collection of experiences that like are formative to that inflection point that happens in your life. So one of the things that's very clear in terms of your why on your website, and by the way, people, if you're listening to this and you are learning about commercial real estate, but haven't done your first, deal, residential, small multifamily, Antonio's got an amazing program that is like unlike I've ever seen. Part of his story is like, and his why is, wanted to retire your parents. So tell me about that. Like, that to me, sometimes people feel like it's a burden, but what are your thoughts on that? And why is that part of like your why?
There are days where it feels like a burden for me as well. I don't want to make it seem like it's all sunshine and rainbows. There are days where, I break down because of how much pressure I put on myself to do that. But yeah, my parents sacrificed a lot to come here. Like my dad is a contractor and he still works full time. He's 61 or 62 now. And he has arthritis in his hips, his knees, and his shoulders all throughout his body. But he's still like going down on the ground, laying tile every day. And so like that, it's very motivating to think about the struggle that he went through to put us into a decent neighborhood growing up and a decent home and a decent school. And that set me on this path. So the way I look at it is he sacrificed 30 years of his life. The least I could do is sacrifice the first 10 or 15. And then maybe my kids won't have to sacrifice anything for their future, ideally. And so he got us a leg up from where his family was to start. And then I'm trying to get us another leg up or the leg out where we don't have to keep doing it for forever. And my mom, she stayed home and took care of us, which I know a lot of the kids when I was growing up didn't have that. Their mom was working a second job. And I think it helped instill like good values in us and forced me to not be doing stupid stuff that I could have been doing instead as a kid, which some other people did. And so, yeah, I'm kind of looking at it. Is my dad's the higher priority because he's like in physical pain while he works, whereas my mom, not so much. But yeah, that's kind of the thought process behind it.
Yeah, and one of the things you said too, there was like is a little bit of nuance there, is that there's a lot of moms out there that are working a second job, meaning that being a mother is a full-time job in of itself, and absolutely critically important. And there's a lot of people out there that are working two jobs as parents, and it's tough, man. I mean, I have two kids, and I have a hard time like spending like 2 hours like playing on the ground and that sort of thing, because I'm just like, I need to go and move. And I take them all over town to museums and that sort of thing. I have to be like constantly moving and stuff like that. So, but let's talk about generational wealth or multi-generational wealth, because some of your first partners were family members. Like when you first went into this, you probably had some money saved up. Were you like 100% comfortable with, hey, mom, dad, brother, let's do this real estate thing? Did you have like a kind of discomfort along that? Like, I don't want to do business with friends and family. Or did you kind of go into it? Like, just tell me about how that conversation went, because this is so important for people that have people there in their sphere of influence that are friends and family that can be their first investment partners, that seed capital that allows them to grow into a real estate dynasty. So tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, I hinted at my Amazon FBA business failing and learning a lot from partnerships before. It's a good thing I did because it slides in perfectly here. So I partnered with my best friend for that at the time. And he had, after we quit our full-time jobs to go full in on this Amazon FBA thing, he went to Asia and started traveling and stopped responding to my calls. And obviously, when you're starting a business, you can't just stop responding to calls.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I learned a lot from that like having an active business partner really shot me in the foot because he was in control of certain things and I couldn't control them. And so I had to do what I had to do with what I could do. And I couldn't do what I needed because I needed his help. And so after that, I kind of was scarred about partnerships with friends and family. And I wasn't, not necessarily family specifically, but people who are close to me. Let's just bucket it as that.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, I was like, I'm going to figure out this real estate thing on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started doing that, in the beginning, when I just started looking, my dad and my brother and my mom, I remember my parents came with me to my first few properties to look at, and they weren't going to invest in me. They just wanted to be there. My mom was like, "Oh, you're going to buy this house? Like this is," and I'm like, all I'm seeing is I'm running the numbers in my head. I'm like, this house cash flows. I don't care what it looks like right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mom would have been a really bad partner to start because she would have discouraged me from so many what would have been good deals. And I started taking those leaps by myself. I got my first deal under contract by myself, and I was planning on buying it with an FHA loan. Even though I was living in New York City, I was going to put 10% down and live there. But like literally 10 days before we close, after seeing that I'm going through this stuff, and I showed my dad and my brother and my family the numbers of what I'm doing, my dad and my brother were like, "Hey, we want to be a part of this."
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I would recommend to everyone is there's two things. One, you can't convince everyone to partner with you or to invest with you in some way, shape, or form. The person has to be open and ready to it. And then two, you, I forgot what I was going to say. Two is, I had it in the beginning.
My wife does this. She's a math teacher, so she's like A, B, 3. So yeah, sometimes like when I'm doing things like the 3 things you need to do like this, and I'm like, oh crap, there isn't a third.
Oh, I remember the second one now. It was show people, don't necessarily tell them about it. Like in the beginning, I was telling people about I want to invest in real estate, but no one gives a crap about me telling them about it. They give a crap about me actually doing it. And now they see the experience and now they see it on social media. And so that experience is helping me get people's trust to invest with me more now, even on social media. And so that me putting myself out there to do it, and then all of a sudden them seeing me doing it is what actually got them to do it. Now, up until like the last few months, it has been me doing everything for the portfolio in terms of finding new deals, signing loans, talking to lenders, talking to property management companies, you name it. It's all been me. I've recently been like, hey guys, this is taking too much of my time. And since my brother and my sister are already going to start taking part of the portfolio when my parents go away, but also like I want to get to the goal quicker for my dad and my mom. I'm like, how do we get everyone involved? So I started getting everyone involved in the business, and now they start having active roles. And I've kind of just been like the leader of trying to guide people in the right direction. And that has been a transition and a change. But up until that point, I was the only active person and everyone else was just passive. They trusted me to make the decisions. And now they still trust me to make the decisions because I've been the one who's doing it. So I think there has to be a trust in the partnership that you have of like, I trust that person. They're the expert to make the decision. And it is on the person who's making the decisions to make decisions best for all parties, not just their selfish interest, in order to gain the trust that they deserve and to maintain it.
Absolutely. We were talking, Antonio, in the green room, we were talking about kind of picking on what our case study was going to be for today in terms of a deal story to talk in specificity. And we identified that moment when had to start maybe considering some alternative capital sources to grow this. I'm going to call it a family business now, right? So tell us about what led up to that moment with talking about your dad about the possibilities of tapping into home equity to put this thing on steroids.
Yeah, so I was reading, we just got our first property in November 2019, and then at this point it was like December, and I was like, I got to figure out how I'm going to do this again, but I got nothing in my bank account. And so I'm reading Raising Private Capital by Matt Faircloth, somewhere up there. And I was like, I don't know anyone in my life that has any money. I'm 26. I don't know anyone in my life that has a lot of, like, a huge retirement account, but I do know some people that own a house. And my dad had just finished paying off his mortgage and was all excited about being debt free. And I was like, we need to use this debt. And he was like, no, I'm not doing it. I don't want it. My mom was even more, no, we're not doing it. My dad couldn't even get the loan by himself anyway, because he doesn't show any income as a self-employed person. And so I had a cushiony 9-to-5 software engineering job in New York City. And so I could take on a bunch of DTI, and I was like, I'll sign the loan with you. We'll use this money. Just let me use it. I will buy a few houses, fix them up, refinance, and then pay off your loan a year later. How about that? And I think it was because it was a short period of time. He was like, I'm willing to try that out. And so that's a good tip for anyone who's trying to get a partnership, is don't promise something for 30 years. Just do a really short period of time and test the waters. When you can lower the commitment level, the more likely someone's going to want to do it. And so I said, I'll pay back the loan in a year. So we bought 2 properties, cash, fixed them up, refinanced them. Or right before we were about to refinance them, this is now March 2021. My dad is in Florida on vacation, but the entire family got COVID. And my dad couldn't walk. He was like, they sent me a video of him on his knees moving around the house on a chair. It was just really weird. It hit him really bad. And he was 59 at the time, and his 60th birthday was coming up. And so I was like, listen, we're at the time that I can refinance both of those properties and pay off the house. But if we do that, we'll have no capital to start, and we'll have to wait to save a bunch of cash flow for a bunch of months before we do that. The other option is that I refinance these and we keep going. And he sat there for a couple of minutes and thought about it and was like, yes, let's do it. And I don't think if he had not had COVID in that exact moment, would he had really realized that, oh crap, I can't keep working like this for the rest of my life. I need something to go. And so again, we can call that pure luck, because I don't know what would have happened had he not been sick with COVID. My mom was still against it. But then we used that capital from the refinance for both of those. We bought 1 property cash, and we bought 3 more now. And then I also bought another one with a very low down payment. So we're at 8 properties, 18 units. And that one refinance allowed us to go from 1 property to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, really. And we still have 20 to 25% equity in each of those properties that we have, plus the 1 property that we hold cash that has doubled in value. So now we have more equity than we started with, and we have cash that we can keep tapping to keep buying more, which is what the objective is here.
So in closing on this story here, because there's a lot of teachable moments and little breadcrumbs along this story, but what did this, and I know you're you're a humble person, that sort of thing, but how much value did you end up creating through unlocking that through that? Because this sounds like several hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of value, just basically through this, just created out of thin air.
Yeah, you call it out of thin air, but
I know it's not fair.
Analyzing, by analyzing the properties properly, I guess we took $300,000 out of that house, and we'll call that equity. And I've turned that into about $550,000 of equity.
Mm-hmm.
COVID played a huge part of that. I'm not going to say that I did nothing there, and has bought us, we'll call it a couple $1,000s a month in cash flow on top of what we were making before. So for me, plus the pay down. And once you start adding all that up, it starts to add up to a lot more. So it's like, but that was just sitting there, and my dad was okay with not paying any interest on it. And for me, that was hurting us, because that's capital that could be used to buy and have, the 3% growth on each one, the equity pay down, the taxes, all that helping us in the direction of building more wealth, while instead of it just sitting there and letting that one house appreciate over time that they live in.
Absolutely. Hey, I want to get into live Q&A,
Mhm.
but before we do that, I want to ask you, because a lot of our listeners here maybe own 1 or 2 investment properties. They're looking to scale into commercial, scale into whatever, maybe scaling a small multifamily thing there, and they're struggling with it. Like, what's your words of advice to them to, unlock that in their mind and how to chart the path forward?
Yeah, you got to be somewhat creative to first find the sources of capital that you do have access to, whether it's still that job, or maybe you use a HELOC now instead of a cash out refinance if it's a house that you own, or if the investment property is under your name, you can get a HELOC as well. So looking, like, the way I look at it is I would write out all the people that you have in your life that you have a decent amount of trust with. You could label it 7 out of 10 trust if you wanted to put it on a scale, and then write out what all assets you think they might have from the conversations you've had with them, and talk to them about real estate. The ones who are interested will kind of guide you in the direction where you can have a deeper conversation with them about what you could do if you partnered together, even if it was just a short-term deal. And from there, you might find 1 or 2 people that can help you scale your portfolio while you still have your job, making some money, saving some, so you can keep doing this without having to wait 5 years to save for your next down payment, which is probably what would happen for most people. That's kind of how I look at it, is you probably have some of these resources right now, whether it's people, money, or time, and you need to start finding and keeping accurate track of what you do have, so this way you can use it better.
Awesome. I got a ton of value out of this, Antonio. So let's get into Q&A with a live studio audience. But before we do that, I just want to let you know, if you're listening to the recorded version of this on Apple, Spotify, everywhere we syndicate throughout podcast land, and you want to get in a live Q&A with absolute titans like Antonio Cucciniello, Matt Faircloth, Gino Barbaro, Brian Berg, Reed Goosens, Ashley Kerr, Paula Nichols, you got to join our Facebook group, Go Big Live Real Estate Investors Group. Just shoot a request to join. I'll let you in, assuming you're not a spam bot, of course. And you can get a lot of free value out of having access to our guests, and also getting access to these recordings weeks ahead of time. Then we drop it in this podcast platform. So, Antonio, thanks again for being on the show, man.
You got it. Thanks for having me, man.